Hi, my name is David Brady and I worked on all areas of the ASP.NET web application with specific focus on the UI and UX design.
Hi, I'm Wayne Flanagan and I worked on all areas of the ASP web application with specific focus on data access components.
Hi, my name is John McDermott and I worked on the Get Geolocation component of the ASP.NET application.
Hi, my name is Stephen Riley and I worked on the implementation of the analytics section.
Hi, my name is David O'Brien. I developed the Android for project.
GameCatcher is a multi-tiered web application with both commercial and non-commercial user interfaces, which allows pub owners to make intelligent choices on the sporting events they choose to show. This information is then made available to the public by an Android mobile application, which in turn displays the range of venues showing their chosen event relevant to their current location. GameCatcher uses the ASP.NET framework for the commercial side of the application, and Android for the non-commercial mobile side of the application. Both of these technologies were new to us and therefore presented many challenges.
One of the difficulties I had in the project was figuring out how to make asynchronous calls across the network. Seeing as though Android moved everything off the main UI thread, everything has to be run in the background, and with that I had to create an asynchronous post class, and with that I could post several variables across to a PHP script. This was called in the registration, for example. Here you can see the asynchronous post is declared, variables are passed to it, and it receives a response once it goes to the PHP. In the PHP, variables are taken in. They're used to run queries on the database. Once the queries come back, it's determined whether or not the query is successful, and the result is then returned as a JSON object to the Android project, the application.
To demonstrate the levels of complexity that went into the web application, we have handpicked the scheduler and analytics code behind files. The code shown retrieves the user's username from the session, then opens a connection to the database. Next, it creates an instance of a user's object and passes the retrieved username as a parameter to the getUser method. This returns the user ID, which is then passed to the getClient method, which returns a client's account ID. The match sock ID is then retrieved from a label in the grid view. An SQL command is then created and set with the type of stored procedure and its text as the procedure name. Two parameters are then created using the retrieved values and passed to the stored procedure. The connection is called and the procedure is executed as a non-query, as it is an insert statement.
Here we have the analytics section. What we're doing here is we're creating two new objects, a team and account object, and then on the page load event we are setting our Twitter API key, we're creating a new array list, and then we're adding all of our keywords to the array list. These are the current Premier League football teams which we're going to use to search against the Twitter API. Below we're declaring two stacks which will store the keywords when they are returned and the count or the instances of those keywords. Here we have the tweetinv Twitter API code. We're setting our search parameters such as geolocation and our time constraint, which is set to recent. We're returning keyword objects and count objects, and we're adding them to our stack data structures. We then pop the keywords out of the stack and assign them to a string variable, x representing the x coordinate on the graph. This is then done for all. Here we have we're declaring variables for our y coordinates, which are long, and we're also declaring string variables, which will be used as proxies, as you'll see below. We're taking the count object, but as it is an object and cannot be converted directly to a string or to a long, we first have to store it in a proxy and store it as a string. Then once it's stored as a string, we can convert it to a long, or a 64-bit integer. Once we have all of the x and y coordinate variables, we add them to their individual array lists. Here we have team array for x coordinates and count array for all our y coordinates. And then we simply bind these arrays to our ASP.NET Graph control. Welcome to the main landing page of the Game Catcher application. From this view, we are able to register for a new account or log in with a pre-existing account. For this use case, we will assume that we're a new user and we're registering for an account for the first time. Here you can see the registration page, which contains a simple 4-item form, which allows you to enter in your username. For this, we will go with testuser9, email address test9@test.com, password test138 with a capital T, and confirm it test138 with a capital T. We then click register, and it should redirect us to the login screen. Here we are in the login screen, which we have been redirected to automatically from the registration screen. We'll now enter our new user details, which is testuser9, and our password test138 with a capital T, and click login. This has now redirected us to the client profile.aspx page, which is the landing page for all client users. It's important to note that we have defined specific user roles, so anytime a new user is registered, they are automatically assigned the role of client. There is also a role for an admin user. They will have to be added manually, but when an admin user logs in, it is recognized and they are brought to a different landing page. We will explain and demonstrate this admin section of the application in a later use case.
This is the use case to describe the system interaction for a client to create a profile, select events to show, and view and edit selected events. The logged in user, as identified from the session by their username here, has their username and user ID automatically written to these uneditable text boxes. The user now enters the required details to create a profile. The user has the option to use their current GPS coordinates or can enter them manually. In this case, we'll use the current GPS coordinates. The user then copies and pastes these values into the text boxes above. The user then submits and a profile is now created. From here, the client can view the scheduler page to add games to show. In this case, a soccer match from the Premier League. The client selects games to show, updates the schedule, and can view them from the My Schedule page. From here, the client has the option to remove games from their showing list. This ends the use case.
In this use case, we will demonstrate the analytics section of the client profile view. Here we can see the analytics section populated. On page load, an ASP graph is generated. The data populating this is pulled from a process whereby we search Twitter's database for all recent instances of a specific keyword, in this case Premier League teams, within a specific geo-radius. This information can then be used to help the client user determine which game will draw the largest crowd based on interest. We had planned to host the full game capture application in order to provide an accessible prototype to the examiner. However, due to technological constraints, this was not possible. Due to the collection of technologies we use throughout the application, such as ASP.NET 4.5.1, SQL Server, and PHP 5, we found it very difficult to find a web hosting provider that would accommodate our needs. An attempt was made to deploy the application on Microsoft Azure. However, by the time we were granted access to Azure, our hosting deadline had expired. As multiple team members were contributing to the web application simultaneously, version control was at times an issue. However, we overcame this through clear communication and regular Scrum meetings. We are delighted to have delivered a challenging and ambitious project to completion within the project scope. There were a number of challenging roadblocks faced by the team throughout the project lifecycle, but these were overcome and the project was completed within our deadline. But most importantly, we viewed this project as an opportunity to challenge ourselves and to build our skill sets beyond the constraints of our accumulated knowledge. We chose ASP.NET and Android as our frameworks of choice because they were foreign to us and they presented us with a real challenge and a wealth of self-learning opportunities. Game Capture is not only a novel application, but a record of our academic progression in year 3. Thank you.